this is Jacqueline from Lichen Sclerosus Support Network, where our mission is to empower people with lichen sclerosus by providing evidence-based education and support so that we can live in a world where those affected by lichen sclerosus are informed, educated, and get diagnosed early. If you find the information in our videos helpful, please consider donating your time or money so that we can continue our LS education and support efforts. Today, we're going to be talking with Heather Cooan about root cause contributors for lichen sclerosus. Now, this is a topic that gets a lot of attention in online spaces, so we're very excited to have this conversation. Now, for those who are not familiar with Heather Cooan, we do have a ton of videos with her already on our channel that you can check out. But as a brief introduction, Heather Cooan is a double board certified integrative metabolic oncology nutrition consultant, functional medicine practitioner, transformational coach, and lived experience mentor. She supports individuals navigating cancer, autoimmunity, as well as complex chronic illness with evidence-based trauma-informed strategies rooted in nutrition, lifestyle, nervous system regulation, daily habit change, and environmental design. Informed by her own healing journey, including Hashimoto's, lichen sclerosus, vulvar cancer, as well as an ongoing diagnosis of complex PTSD, Heather's work emphasizes bioindividuality, personal agency, and empowerment through lab and data-driven care. She studies under Dr. Nisha Winters as well as Dr. Ahmed Elska and collaborates with metabolic oncology trained physicians and the Metabolic Terrain Institute of Health. So we thank you so much for watching this video. Please like, subscribe, drop any questions that you have for us in the comments. And with that, let's jump into it.
All right, Heather, well, welcome back yet again to Alice Ascend's YouTube channel. We've seen so much of you on our podcast and at the summit, but it's always great to have you back. And I'm particularly really excited about this topic in particular, as you posted something online and it kind of immediately prompted me to have so many thoughts and be like, we need a live discussion. People need to kind of hear this. So I'm so grateful to have you here to talk about root cause contributors. I'll let you just kind of briefly introduce yourself. I know a lot of folks watching are probably already quite familiar with you, but I'll let you kind of do a little intro before we dive into things.
Yeah, sure. So I think we'll include the links to my long detailed story because I am one of those longtime LS patients. I have had symptoms of LS since I was 8 or 12. And it went undiagnosed for 25 years and turned into vulvar cancer. And so then I had to roll with all of that and a ton of other health issues in between and ongoing. And when I got finally confirmed of the LS diagnosis and ended up with the vulvar cancer diagnosis, of which I actually self-diagnosed both with Dr. Google and Coach YouTube, and then sought out a specialist to actually confirm. And so that was a rough day, as you can imagine. But in the process of navigating vulvar cancer and lichen sclerosus for my own body, I actually learned a lot in the alternative nutrition. We have way more control over this stuff than we ever imagined. And I was able to get everything into remission, including Hashimoto's, I should also say that, with limited standard of care intervention. So I did surgery to remove the cancerous tissue. They did not get it all. And so then I went and I did alternative therapies for a good 4 months. Things like high dose IVC, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, HBOT, lots of supplements, but I overhauled my entire life, my nutrition, my stress management. I dug into trauma, which is my current healing chapter, because this is an ongoing adventure, as we will talk about. And in that process, I learned so much. And then I went back to school and got all my nutrition certificates and things and set up shop. And now I've been helping other people navigate both autoimmunity in general, with a specialty in LS, because that's my story. And then a lot of my practice is actually cancer, whether it's breast or colon or lung or all of it. And the team and I at Soil to Soul Nutrition work with anybody who's dealing with autoimmunity, cancer, complex chronic illness. And we work alongside your conventional team, but we help you understand what are the inputs that are driving your disease process and what are the levers that you can pull to try and get that to chill out. So in a nutshell, a very brief nutshell, that's me.
Yeah, that's always the challenge, right? I mean, every time I ask someone to briefly introduce their story, if there's someone who has lichen sclerosus, it's like, how do you briefly condense what for most people is years and
Yeah.
not a clear symptom onset to diagnosis to treatment, right? It's a lot of misdiagnoses and twists and turns, and it's so complex. So that's always the challenge. I'm really impressed that you did it in such a concise way. But yes, we will absolutely link off to Heather's story. I do recommend reading or listening to it. It's really, really profound for anyone watching if you haven't already. So there will be links in the show notes below. But let's dive in. Oh, go for it.
I was just going to comment real fast. What you're talking about is the experience of figuring out what's wrong once symptoms develop. The other big piece of that puzzle is all of the creep that your body was telling you before you even get hit with the actual symptoms of LS. And that piece, like when I dig into that with clients, they're like, holy crap, I was getting sick like years and years before. I had no idea. But yes, it is a journey.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I find that a lot of us end up kind of looking back at our past and kind of we start seeing things that we would have never noticed prior or in the moment. And it's like, and they're not always loud either, is the thing. Sometimes they're subtle, and it really takes, a calm mind to kind of look back and tease through everything to be like, oh wow, my body was trying to communicate with me this whole time, and I just over the radar. Our bodies don't always communicate with a loud scream, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes again, it's more hushed.
And not just that. So a lot of times it's subtle, because we'll get into cell danger response and what that means and what that kind of looks like. Yeah. But the other thing is we've also been conditioned that some of these things are normal, right?
That's true.
One, because most LS sufferers are women, and we've been conditioned to do everything for everybody else and put ourselves last. So we just, of course, we're tired. Of course, we have headaches. Of course, we're gaining weight, or we have weight loss resistance, or of course. And then also, it's hectic, the world we live in. It's like hustle culture and achieve and run and do all the things. And so we ignore that check engine light until we have no choice.
I was going to say that definitely resonates with me, what you were saying right there. And I'm sure it does for many people. So let's dive into kind of this topic of root cause and root cause contributors. But let's start with root cause. How do you define that? And at what point did you start questioning that search for a single root cause in autoimmune conditions like lichen sclerosus?
Yeah. So I've actually always used the term root cause contributors myself. Okay. I have always known that it's not a single cause. And what caused me to kind of speak up where you saw me, it was in a pretty large support group where I was just like, guys, there is no root cause, only root cause contributors. So if we look to like Webster, the definition of a root cause is a fundamental reason for a problem's occurrence. So that implies a single reason.
Right.
Excuse me. I got dairy yesterday. I'm still fighting food sensitivities myself. So, when I just over and over, I see women in these support groups toiling over, I changed my diet. I took out all the things that are said to talk about. Like I don't eat sugar. I don't eat gluten. I don't eat oxalates. I don't eat I'm living off of lettuce and water. And why do I still have symptoms? And then I see, they're like, well, I saw a naturopath and we worked on my gut. And I thought I was doing all of the things. Why don't I feel better? Well, because it's not a single cause. Now, root cause contributors or causal factors are conditions that influence the problem, but don't solely cause it. So we are not closed systems. Like we're an open organism. We're influenced by external inputs in our environment. And that includes the food that you eat, but it includes the toxins that we're exposed to in the air, water, food. It includes the stress that you're under at work, the taxes that we pay, the traffic annoyances, injuries, whether you broke your ankle or stumped your toe or bumped into the table and hurt your hip or whatever, viruses, lack of nutrients that we have accumulated because we weren't eating the right foods, or our soils are not enriched with enough nutrients. Like the list is long in terms of all of those things. Mm. And I've always worked off of the three-legged stool concept of autoimmunity. And so for those who are new to the three-legged stool, there's three legs. The first is a genetic vulnerability of some kind. And I know that there's like this big push to find the genetic factors for lichen sclerosus, but that's looking at what's the LS gene. Right. And it's not that simple, because you might have an LS gene, but you might also have a gene that doesn't allow you to convert vitamin A, right? Or excuse me, beta carotene into vitamin A, beta carotene from like carrots or squash or some of these things into vitamin A that you can actually use to run your immune system. Vitamin A, by the way, is critical for the integrity of all of our mucous membranes. That includes our vulvar tissue. Right. Or you might have genes that don't allow you to make enough vitamin D. Vitamin D is what runs your immune system's ability to differentiate between your vulva, your thyroid, whatever it is, and the cold, COVID, the flu, whatever other thing it should be attacking. Or you might have genetics that make you more vulnerable to stress and more easily stuck in like a fight or flight amped up system. So first leg, there's a genetic vulnerability of some kind. Usually there's multiple. You may not be able to detoxify very well. Maybe you can't let go of estrogen very well. And then there's a second leg, which is a microbiome disruption of some kind. So everybody tries to reduce chronic illness and autoimmunity to leaky gut. That is incorrect.
That's now, typically what I see in online space.
Always, yeah. Leaky gut.
Yeah.
Like occurs or originates in the gut. It's not true. Also, how did the gut get disrupted in the first place?
Right.
So if you have an issue with your microbiome, there's a reason that made you vulnerable to start with. And so
that's going to be different for all of us, I would assume, right?
It's going to be different, and it's usually not just one thing. But the gut disruption could be as simple as you don't have enough stomach acid because you're nutritionally deficient in like your minerals, like zinc, right? It could be that. It could be just that. And then things get out of balance with the microbiome. It could be leaky gut. It could be a critter. It could be all kinds of things, an infection, but it's not just that. So you have to have the genetic disposition and a microbiome disruption. And then there's that last bucket, and that's you have to have a trigger or multiple triggers, i.e. root cause contributors of some kind, and usually more than one. And this is where we put like the heavy metals and the viruses like Epstein-Barr and nutrient deficiencies and trauma when you were a child or accumulated stress as an adult, or like all of these things add up in that bucket. So that's the model I've always worked on, and that's the model that I unwound for myself. And so that's the difference between a root cause and a root cause contributor. But there's just, I get it. Chronic illness sucks. Yeah. I wish there was just one reason. Like I tell my clients, I talk about us because I live in this bucket myself. We're kind of like operating like a laptop battery that has been worn out. You know how you just leave your laptop plugged in for like years?
Yes. That's where I'm at with my computer right now.
And then you take it off, try to go travel, but it doesn't last for very long.
Right.
So you can't replace that battery. Like that's our battery. We're born with kind of a faulty battery. But we can control all of the things that are drawing a charge off of that battery. Right. We can control how often we plug it in and how long we try and use it in a single sitting, right? We got to manage that faulty battery on an ongoing basis. I wish there was just one single root cause.
Me too. I wish there was a single everything. I think that's one of the reasons, your post really spoke to me was I see so much want and desire for a single thing, a single answer, a single cause, a single treatment. What's the best treatment for me? What's the best moisturizer? And I always say it's going to vary based on an individual basis. I mean, there's no such thing as one steroid medication that's going to work for us all. Steroids don't work for everyone. It's complex. The human body is complex. And unfortunately, that means that it's not going to be so straightforward as, one thing causing it, one thing treating it. So how has this thinking about root cause contributors changed your journey with lichen sclerosis and evolved your thinking about healing and autoimmunity and LS?
Yeah. My personal journey has shifted recently. Well, in the last few years. So for those of you who've already heard my story and those that are going to go back and listen to the nitty-gritty details, I fully healed my physical body. Fully healed it by going through the 3 legs, like figuring out what my genetic issues were, making sure to change my lifestyle, my environment, all of it, my habits, to plug in where I was vulnerable. I figured out all my triggers, all the things that were drawing a charge off of that battery. I addressed all of them, but I missed a big chunk of like a huge category of things that draw on that circuitry. And that is the mental and emotional and the stress coping mechanisms and accumulated stress and trauma. In my case, complex trauma. So when the pandemic hit, I kind of got knocked out of my routines like everybody did. My husband was in a toxic work experience at that time and he had to quit. We just had to for his health. And that kind of made me panic. And I went back into marketing consulting because it was easy money.
Yeah, of course.
So before I did what I do now, I was an executive in the marketing space doing digital marketing for big brands that you use all the time. And that's part of why I got so sick. Like, I think that's part of what escalated things to cancer and really I was totally burnt out. So during the pandemic, I decided to go back and do some of that because I felt like I needed to make up for his income just in case. And it turns out this just in case panic over money and security is actually an issue from my childhood. And so that was kind of the beginning of starting to learn my own habits and patterns. Because as I was working in that marketing deal, and it was just a contract, like a consulting gig, I started to fall into old habits. Like I started not sleeping like I'm supposed to. I would be up a little bit later, or I wouldn't be able to sleep. Or my nutrition started to fall away and I would reach for convenience foods. Some stress eating tendencies started to come back. Like I just started to fall into old habits and I was like, what is going on? What's happening to me? And at the same time, I was also trying to do some projects at work for my business. And I kept kind of running into walls. Like, why can't I get this started? Why can't I follow through? So I actually hired an EFT practitioner, which is emotional freedom technique. It's tapping, right? You tap on pressure, on points on your body to kind of regulate your nervous system, but you can also use it to bring up some things that are kind of in your subconscious. And I thought that I had like survived my childhood and everything was good because I actually come from a pretty dysfunctional background. Dad was an alcoholic, drug addict, and he used to hit my mom, like beat the crap out of her for 25 years. And so I was this high-powered, like successful person. I was making tons of money. I was at the top of my game, all these things. And then I got sick and I fell down that mountain and had to rebuild. But I was like, I'm well adapted. How can my childhood have affected me that way? Well, during the EFT sessions, I started to connect dots of like, oh, some of these patterns relate back to stuff that I picked up in childhood. And what I figured out is that my whole identity, high-powered, successful, driven Heather, that's not actually me. That is the part of me that I had to be in order to survive my childhood. And then it was rewarded in school and later in the corporate workplace because I was doing and highly productive. So I was actually waging a war. Just me, all by myself in my head. I was at war for like 30 freaking years.
And unbeknownst to you, right?
I had no idea. No idea. I was just like living life. And I thought I was doing all the things I'm supposed to. But then it turns out I was actually I wasn't me. I was living in a trauma loop. That was my trauma pattern.
Right.
And so when all of that knocked me off on the pandemic and I started to slide back into old habits, I learned, oh, this is how I learned how to cope and how my survival mechanism was to completely abandon myself and do for others And it wore me down physically to the point where I was forced to look at it. And that has opened up the whole journey over the last couple of years. 2 years ago, I was confirmed complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And a lot of that is childhood stuff, but then compounded. I've got a lot of like toxic workplace trauma that I've been working through. And that's what kind of led me down into the rabbit holes of learning about accumulated stress and trauma and complex trauma and how it affects the physical body. And I know there's somebody here already asking, well, this doesn't apply to me because I don't have big trauma. I wasn't hit as a child. I wasn't sexually abused. My parents had a healthy, wonderful, normal marriage. Okay, sure. But if you think about the patterns that you engage in on a daily basis, how do you cope with stress? Do you clam up and just keep on pushing through? Do you actually take a break and acknowledge and deal? Can you feel emotions in your physical body? I was completely disconnected. I couldn't. I'm still learning.
That gave me anxiety just hearing that.
Yeah.
That statement. I already felt the like.
Yeah. I couldn't feel them. I still can't. I'm figuring it out. At how old am I? 45? I'm figuring out how to deal with emotions. The last emotion I remember feeling in my body, I was 8 years old. And it was fear in the pit of my stomach as a stomachache because I got sent to my room without dinner. Like I was in trouble, and being in trouble in my house was scary.
Yeah.
And so that was fear. That's the last one I remember. That's it. So at eight. So now the last couple of years, I'm like, what do you mean feelings are not just thoughts? I had no idea. Feelings are actually in your body. So like, think about it. When you get angry, what does it feel like in your body? When you're guilty, what does it feel like? Like, do you sweat? Does your heart race? Do you feel a pressure in your chest? Do you feel a pain in your stomach?
Such a hard question for so many of us. I remember when I was first asked this, I just went like blank. Like I was like, I don't know. Does anyone know how to answer this? Do people answer you back? Like how? Because we're not taught these things either. And if part of our trauma is that disassociating mind from body, then it's going to be all the more challenging.
Yeah. And that's a coping mechanism that I picked up because it wasn't safe for me to stop and breathe and feel and process through my emotions. I had to keep moving. I had to be the fixer. I had to make sure everything was safe because nobody else was leading. So I didn't have time. So now we got to process 30 years worth of crap. And that's how I've learned. Oh, so there is all the physical and physiological stuff. And a wonderful book is actually this one. This is The Biology of Trauma by Amy. I think she spells or pronounces her name Apigian.
Okay.
But it's wonderful in terms of just breaking down how the mental and emotional get stuck in the physical body. Because it is a physical response that we have. Like people who have experienced anxiety, you know the racing heart, right? And the racing thoughts. And sometimes you're sweating a little extra than you thought than is normal for you. Maybe you can't concentrate, or maybe you're laser focused. Like that's some of the physiology that happens with stress. And when stress becomes chronic, it becomes toxic and it becomes trauma as far as your nervous system and your physical body are concerned. So you don't have to have been beaten or hit or raped or any of these crazy big T traumas. But if you just pushed past capacity for too long, your nervous system gets danger signals, whether it's just doing too much for too long or actual major distress. And physical injury falls in here too.
Right. Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned that because, obviously, like you, I speak to a lot of folks with lichen sclerosus. And one thing, that often comes up is trauma. I'll get asked, is there a connection between lichen sclerosus and trauma? I have trauma in the past. Do you think it's worth, my working on? And then I'll hear other people tell me like, but I don't have any trauma. And I always say, it's, the capital T, the small t, like most of us, again, if we sit back, we're going to find multiple instances throughout our lives. It's not always these big things. And yeah, physical trauma too, right? I'll say like, like horseback riders, you fall off your horse, shatter your pelvis. That's a trauma to the genital pelvic area. And so again, like just the world of trauma in and of itself, right? Again, like coming back to that singular versus like pluralistic view, even in the world of trauma, it's not as simple as one trauma, one cause, one effect, one solution, right? It's so much more than that. It's multiple traumas that are interconnected in different ways. And it becomes really, really hard. And so I want to kind of pause here because I'm thinking that for the listener, this might be a little bit overwhelming, right? I think part of the reason the term root cause, I need to find the root cause. I think part of why that's so sticky in, some of these spaces is because we just want to feel better. We are not okay and we want to feel better. But when we hear, well, there is no such thing as just one thing. It's multiple things. And it's not even multiple things that are lined up neatly in a row that we can just, it's messy. So if this is already overwhelming, looking at this picture is very overwhelming. And I think a lot of people might start to think like, well, how do you even begin to disentangle this mess, and with whom, and is it even possible? So can we maybe address that fear of sitting with, holy crap, this is much bigger, much messier than I thought, and where do I go from here? Because again, like I truly believe that for everyone, it's never just one thing, it's multiple. So where do we go? We have that knowledge. Where do we go with that knowledge moving forward?
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. I think the reason why root cause has been boiled down to a single root cause that everyone is chasing is because the symptoms of LS equate to desperation. They just do. I've been there.
Me
At
too.
the height of my illness, I was having trouble walking. Like, it is so debilitating physically. It is so heart-wrenching emotionally. It takes a toll on your feminine identity, your sexual identity. It interrupts your intimate relationships. It can interrupt even like friendships and family relationships.
Absolutely.
Because of the part of the body where it's affected, and because nobody understands anything but sexually transmitted diseases in that area. So there's a stigma that comes with this. Not our fault, not even the person's fault who is carrying that stigma, like that impression, because nobody knows about how this stuff works. We think like if there's an itchy vulva, oh, it's got to be like something's wrong, like it's a disease, like there's like it's a yeast infection, which we think is ew, gross, or it's an STI, ew, gross, like
yeah.
But it doesn't have to be.
No.
So I understand the desperation, and I understand the grippiness of if I can just heal my gut, if I can just get the right diet.
Yeah.
So,
and I was there too, like absolutely 100%. That first year of my journey was like, I don't even think desperation like captures where I was at. I was willing to do anything. If you told me like, take wall paint and paint your face red, and I would have done it. Like, I don't even care at that point, right? Because it, to your point, it was disrupting literally every facet of my life, and deeply, not just a little interruption, like full on breaking down all of these parts of my life. So I totally get it as well. And I was definitely there myself.
Yeah. And part of what's hard with an illness like this is because of that desperation and that constant search for just symptom relief. That in itself is a danger signal to your nervous system, and it keeps you stuck in this fight or flight cycle. So there's two things. We have to find a way for some sort of symptom relief right up front.
Yes.
And we have to work on all of this complex stuff that is leading to the disease process in the first place. Because LS is a confirmed autoimmune issue. It's not a topical that's going to solve it. It's correcting the nerve or the immune system dysfunction that's going to solve it. In terms of longevity, you very well may get relief out of the topical steroids, and I would never, ever, ever encourage anybody not to use them. Use them, especially if they work. I get
Right.
so many people who come to me because I straddle both toolboxes,
Right.
and they are like trying to avoid, how do I not use the steroids because I'm afraid?
Right.
Well, do the steroids work for you? If they work for you, use them. Like,
Yeah.
what are you doing? We can work on the other stuff, but why are you
Absolutely.
suffering
Well, and the
unnecessarily?
two can coexist, right? I
They
mean,
have to
like I
coexist.
can absolutely use, and steroids do. I'm one of the lucky ones in that like steroids work for my body, but also clobetasol just worked. There are some people for whom steroids work, but they have to go through multiple different strengths to find the right one. I was lucky in that it was just like first thing prescribed, it worked. But I always tell people it's not like that was the only thing, and I just put that on and said, "Cool,
Right.
good
Right.
night." And it did help with the symptoms. And I will say that all the other part of the journey does get easier when the symptoms are quieter. When the
Yes.
symptoms are at their loudest, it's really hard to do that work.
Exactly.
Really hard to do that work. But once they start to calm down,
Yes.
then it can be easier. So I hear what you're saying. First, we got to find a way to get those symptoms to kind of quiet down.
Yep, exactly. And so I think I'm a fan of all things that doctors say anyway, but I'm also a fan of filling the gaps when things just don't work.
Right.
So if the steroids work for you, please use them. Like whatever you need to do to get the symptoms to quiet down so you have capacity to deal with the rest is where we have to start. So and like you said, sometimes it's a different strength steroid, sometimes it's a different type of steroid, sometimes it's a different type of carrier for this steroid, whether it's a cream or an ointment, whatever it is. Troubleshoot all of that with your provider, with your pharmacist, figure out how you can go through as many steroid iterations as you need to see if one of them does work. That's where I would start.
Right.
And then after that, there are additional topicals that can be helpful. I actually have, and I'll send you the link so you can put it in the show notes for this show. I have a list of all of the topicals that I have heard about that have been helpful from my clients.
Right.
I actually don't use any topicals myself. I am in the menopause area myself, or like heading in. I'm early, but it looks like my ovaries have retired, and so I'm just now starting to think about moisturizers and things. But my whole journey, I used clobetasol for 2 weeks in between confirmation of my self-diagnosis and cancer surgery. After that, I didn't use them again, and I haven't. I've been in remission for, gosh, that was 2018. So is that 7 years, 8 years, something like that?
So bad at math. Can I use the calculator?
Yeah, it's been a while. So I haven't done any topicals, but the thing that I recommend, so I have my own recipe, but an ozonated castor oil is very, very helpful. So this is from Pure O3, PURO3 is the brand that I like. And all of that is there's a link so you can get my recipe if you want. We put a few essential oils and things in there that are calming and soothing to the skin. But if you apply that at night before you go to bed, or even in the morning and wear it all day, it depends on your sense of smell, because castor oil smells like castor oil. And when you ozonate it, it smells
Has
stronger
a
of
different
castor
smell
oil.
too.
But that can be very helpful in terms of penetrating multiple layers of the skin and, helping things get calmed down a little bit. But I would just go through all the topicals and experiment until you find one that at least starts to help with those symptoms. The other thing is, usually we can start to pick up a pattern of the flares. Do your flares happen before your period? Do they happen after your period? If you have a clear pattern around your cycle, go find a graphic. Just ask Google or Google Images for a graphic of the hormone cycles during your cycle. So you want like the luteal phase and the follicular phase and all of this. When is estrogen high? When is progesterone low? All of this. Because times of high estrogen and times of low estrogen both can cause LS to flare. So if you have identified that, go find that chart, figure out which hormone it is you think, and then take that to your provider, because we can do things like topical estrogens or even hormone replacement for the older ladies. There's all kinds of options there. So these are the things that are going to help to get you at least, hopefully, some quieter relief. Now, all of these tools don't work for every single person, like you said. For the tougher cases where we have to dig into the more complicated stuff first, working with a practitioner is going to help you cut through that noise, because we can pull out functional testing to help kind of track some big things down and figure out what's the lowest hanging fruit that we can deal with. And by lowest hanging fruit, that means highest impact, lowest effort.
Right.
That is what I'm looking for, not just easiest to change.
Yeah.
And so it might be as simple as pulling your water report from the EWG in the US. If you're in a foreign country, pardon me in my US-ness, if you're in a country other than the United States, you'll need to like converse with your local municipality about what's in your
Right.
water. But I have run water reports for women and found out that their water is radioactive. And we just get them on reverse osmosis or filtered water, and that brings down their toxin load like a major. And then their liver is able to work a little bit better. And then when the liver is able to work a little bit better, you regulate your estrogen detoxification. And so some of those flares level out. But this is stuff that's difficult to sort through on your own. So if you have the means, then I would definitely seek out a functional or naturopathic or some sort of alternative practitioner to help guide you through this. Now, because chronic illness like this does come with desperation, there is a predatory element to those practitioners.
Right.
Be very, very careful and vet the person. Don't just trust that because they're an FMD or a functional this or a functional that or a naturopathic this. You actually want to like understand, what was your schooling? What do you specialize in? How long have you been in practice? Maybe ask them, what is your approach? So I'm dealing with this diagnosis. What's your standard approach? Are you food first? Are you supplements first? Like how do you operate? So I don't know if I made it better, more clear. That's where I would start.
Well, I think what I'm hearing with this is that no matter how messy, there's still hope. And there's still a way to slowly tease apart and clean up that messiness a bit. It just depends on where you're at in your journey and how you respond to kind of topical medications. That's going to determine where you're starting and how. But at least knowing that it can be dealt with. And it's not like there's this big, massive mess with just a bunch of black boxes and question marks, and they're just going to stay there forever. And we can never start to get anywhere with that. I think just knowing that there is hope can be really helpful. And I always recommend, working with, healthcare practitioners in this kind of search, because even something, like diet, folks will be like, should I try this diet? Should I try that diet? Not because I'll tell you, like the diet thing, if you go on online spaces, you will see everything and anything. You have to eat carnivore diet. You have to stop sugar. You have to eat this. And like everything. And I always, the same thing that I say for everything. And I know that probably annoys people, but it's true. I don't think there's one diet for all of us. Diet is a very individualistic thing. If you have a really clear and obvious trigger, like every time I eat an apple, I itch. Okay. But for a lot of us, it's not clear like that. And so we might log, entries for 2 months, but for someone with no training, like for me to take my own data, like I did do an elimination diet in the past, and I logged for months, and I looked at that mess of data and it meant nothing to me. Absolutely nothing. I was like, I don't know what to do with this, where to start, what is meaningful, what is not meaningful, what is noise. I can't tell. Yeah. For me, as someone that has zero background in this, needed, a naturopathic nutritionist to kind of help me understand that. And it's the same for all of this, right? I mean, it's really helpful to have that professional that can kind of make sense of that large data set that for most of us is just going to be nonsensical.
Yeah. And the thing that's hard, I hear all the time, food doesn't matter. I took out sugar and it didn't help. I took out insert anything you can think of here and it didn't help. Well, the issue, it may not be the food. The issue may be that your stress bucket is already full and there may be some foods that are causing it to overflow. Or your stress bucket may be full to the point that your bodily systems are damaged, and that's why you don't work well with certain foods.
Right.
But the thing with actual food sensitivities is that they're usually delayed. If you have like an actual anaphylactic shock,
Right.
That's the thing.
Yes.
But if you just have like a dairy sensitivity, Like, I'm pretty sure that my clearing the throat today, I was dairy 2 days ago because we ate out, and I was like, I betcha. But that's 2 days ago, and I'm clearing my throat. If I didn't know what I know, I would be thinking about, what did I eat yesterday? What did I eat today?
And then it's confusing because that was 2 days ago. Now, presumably you ate more than just that one takeout meal in 2 days. So now how do you pinpoint what in 2 days? Because I eat a lot. I eat a ton. 2 days worth of food? Whew.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's hard.
Exactly. And if you're eating, a lot of us eat the same foods. Like, we kind of imprint on foods and they're familiar. And so we eat the same things all the time. And if you've always eaten the same things all the time and now you're having these symptoms, how could it possibly be that those foods that you've always eaten are now helping to present some of your symptoms? Well, it's because your system changed, not necessarily the foods changed. So you have to look at what's in your stress bucket. Now, when I talk about stress bucket, I'm essentially talking about something called your allostatic load. The allostatic load is a fancy term for the wear and tear that accumulates on your physical body. This is your physiology. So this is where, like, leaky gut might be part of your allostatic load. Toxic metals, radioactive water, inorganic foods, like these may be part of your allostatic load. But also what's in your allostatic load is the fact that you haven't come to grips with your father's death that happened 5 years ago, and that grief that you're still carrying, or the fact that you no longer talk to your sister because you guys got into that fight about inheritance that happened 3 years ago. This is mental and emotional stuff that sticks with us, right? If you're ruminating about things, if you're working a job that you're not happy in, if you're in a marriage or a relationship that you're not happy in or not fulfilled, if you're not leading with a purpose in your life or have a reason, like, all of this adds up in your allostatic load. So I think of it as just like one single stress bucket. And what's interesting about that is negative stress, like the things I just listed, and positive stress, promotions, new babies, marriages, blending families, like all these wonderful things that happen also cause stress. It all goes in one bucket because we have not been around long enough to evolve past saber-toothed tigers. Our systems have one danger response. That's it. Just one. So everything goes in the same bucket. So if you have too much in your bucket at any given time, as soon as it starts to overspill, that's when we end up with symptoms. Because basically your bodily systems, in this case, our immune system and the endocrine system and the nervous system are tied very tightly to the nervous system. Wait, what did I say? Nervous system, endocrine system, immune system. There we go. So the immune system impacts your endocrine system, i.e. all your hormones, right? And the nervous system impacts the immune system as well. All three of them are kind of tied together. So if we have a habit of never speaking up and just doing everything for everybody else, that's sending like danger signals to our nervous system, which impacts our immune system, i.e. the LS symptoms, which also impacts our hormones, i.e. our cycle and things, which also impact the LS symptoms, right? So this is where things get really complicated, and people are probably like, I'm so done with this podcast right now. Forget it. I'm done. I quit. So it matters, is what I'm saying, is everything that adds up in your stress bucket matters. And so you have to think about not just your daily habits, like what am I eating and how am I living my life, but also how are you treating yourself in your mind? How are you engaging with other people? Like, what are your social daily habits? How do you have a tendency to deal with stress when it comes up? Because all of that goes in your allostatic load. And then for those of us that have autoimmune disease, back to that battery that's worn out, inside our bucket, we basically have things like welded to the sides of the bucket that are permanent. So we don't have as much space in our bucket to start with. So we have to manage our stress load differently.
Yeah. I'm thinking a lot about what I commonly see, where it's almost this perfectionist tendency to do all of the things and all of the things perfect. Like, I want to be able to come to you and say, Heather, I addressed all these pieces of stress, and I now cope exactly like this, and I eat exactly like this, and I interact with others like this, I interact with myself like this. But that itself can also be very stressful. That's
Yeah.
a lot of pressure, first and foremost, to put on yourself. So is there like a space in exploring these different buckets, exploring the different root cause contributors, starting to disentangle and working on this, because we do want to heal, but also letting go a little bit at
Yeah,
the same time and giving ourselves permission to maybe not be so perfect with everything.
absolutely.
Because otherwise it kind of feels like, oh shit, okay, so I have to live my life like under a microscope
Mhm.
and be so perfect. Like I have to wash my clothes in this, and I can't use this because microplastics, and I can't do this, and I can't breathe this air, and I need a filter when I go outside. Like, and it just gets it gets a lot. I mean, I see people do this just with the diet piece alone, but if we're addressing all of this, so yeah, do you have any maybe practical advice on working through this, but also giving yourself permission to just be and to let go
Yeah,
and to be a human through all of this?
for sure, for
It's
sure.
hard.
Well, we have to live. We still have to live, and we still have to
That's it.
enjoy life, and we have to not be so burdened, because you can absolutely make it worse by helping yourself.
Right.
I've had several cases where
I
people
think
come
I
in.
did that at one point, which is part of the motivation asking this question, but also I see it a lot in our communities too.
Well, I've had lots of cases where women come to me and they've already been through multiple practitioners, and they're like,
Right.
here's my daily
Yeah.
protocol. And it's like 2-hour morning routine that's like
Right.
perfect, and a super squeaky clean diet that's
Mhm.
really hard controlled, and like a 2-hour evening routine where they're winding down with their blue light glasses and all the things.
Mhm.
And I just ask the question, how do you feel if your schedule gets interrupted?
Right.
If you cannot handle it, if you can't hit all those check boxes in a single day, we've got a problem. You are too
Mhm.
gripped onto that plan that you've built for yourself. And I understand why that happens, because if you
Yeah.
did that and you experienced relief, now you have to do this, or you are going to relapse and you just can't handle anything else. So we have to slowly peel the grip off of that
Right.
big, intense checklist. Um, and it's always a little bit different. Sometimes we find that there's a perfectionist tendency that was developed to survive something else in the past, and
Mhm.
it's now being applied to this. Sometimes it's just incorrect information, or the body or the circumstance have changed, but our plan didn't change with it. Because again, we're open systems. So the diet that's right for me today isn't going to be the diet that's right for me next
Yes.
year or 2 years from now. So even more complex, it changes as we change and
Mhm.
evolve. So yes, that's a big thing. The other thing I see a lot is people add tons of supplements. Well, I
Right.
read that ashwagandha is good for this. Well, did you also
Yeah.
know that ashwagandha kicks up estrogen so it can imbalance your hormones? It
Mhm.
can also make autoimmunity worse because it's a nightshade. But
Right.
I also heard that curcumin was really good for inflammation. Well, did you know that curcumin can be really hard on the liver, and you
Mhm.
need the liver to be able to detox and balance estrogen? And
Right.
like all of these things, also, everything you put in your body is a piece of information that your nervous system has to process. So if you're dealing with a stress bucket that's already too full, and then you're adding, people come to me on like 12, 13, 30 supplements. And I'm
Mhm.
like, let's take all this out.
That's a lot. Yeah.
Let's take all of this out and see how you feel. And
Mhm.
oftentimes your body's telling you you're not digesting well, or you have gas, or you can't poop, or like there's
Right.
some sort of issue. Your body's telling you, I can't process all of this.
Mhm.
Or you all of a sudden can't sleep very well because you're just too agitated. Well, go and look and see. Are you taking 60 million supplements? Did you
Right.
research them all? Did you research how they interact with each other? Did you
Mhm.
research how they interact with any medications you're on? Like sometimes we're accidentally, because we're just so, I gotta fix it. I gotta find relief.
Mhm.
And we don't ever go back and question, well, this is good for this, but also how does it work with what we're already doing? All these other
Yeah.
things. So sometimes we, in it with positive intention to help ourselves, end up adding too much on ourselves, like too much of a
Yeah.
burden.
Mhm.
And so I would think through that. And I would look at like the cheap stuff first that you don't have to pay for. Like, are
Mhm.
you getting sunlight in your eyes as early in the morning
Right.
as you can when you wake up? Right? Or are you just getting up and hitting the coffee right away? Well, your
Mhm.
body needs to wake up first. If you're hitting it with coffee, you're kind of, triggering some stress responses immediately when that cup hits your lip.
Mhm.
So Like, are you taking time for yourself every day? Are you investing not just in yourself, but in your relationships? Do you have a hobby that fills your cup? Are you spending time in joy and connection? And these are things that build oxytocin. Now, unfortunately, on the top of the oxytocin producing list is sex and orgasm, which for some of us is a very painful topic, both mentally, emotionally, and physically. But for others, those parts of us are still healthy enough that we can engage, and that's wonderful. But what about like hugs and kisses and holding hands and cuddling and like gazing into your dog's eyes, or like feeling your cat purr when she sits on your chest, or these are oxytocin producing things. What about helping others? What about volunteering? What about, the reason I bring this up is because oxytocin is the direct antidote to cortisol. The two cannot exist in the body at the same time.
Right.
So if we get physical relief by a topical, if we can find one that kind of helps, don't set the expectation of it must cessate all symptoms. Just find one that kind of helps.
Yeah.
And then go through your days and figure out where you're adding unnecessary stress to yourself because you think you need to do X, Y, and Z. And is there opportunity to add oxytocin in your day-to-day routine somewhere? Those two things are where I would start.
I love that. It makes me want to go hug my dog. Probably will do that afterwards.
Yeah, because that cortisol is always running, and that oxidative, like that bucket is just getting full. And the concept of cell danger response is something that I have recently learned about. And it's basically our cells, our individual cells respond to a danger signal. So if we think of our nervous system as like our home alarm system, and when it gets tripped, we are like, uh-oh, alarm. But our individual cells get that alarm signal. And inside your cells, a little engine called a mitochondria. And that mitochondria is basically what runs our metabolism and our whole life. And in autoimmunity, because of all of those root cause contributors, those little mitochondria are usually suffering. And it's because cell danger response has been on for too long. Like, it's a normal, natural mechanism. We're supposed to get a danger response.
Of course.
But then we're also supposed to resolve and come back down to baseline. But in this world, when you got kids, you got jobs, you got partners that need to be handled, if you will.
Handled.
Here's your socks, here's your lunch, you didn't see it in the fridge, the cat food's right there. Like, we tend to run everybody else's life, not just our own.
Right.
So all of that is a danger signal. So just find a spot. Maybe it's like 20 minutes in the morning with your tea. Maybe it's at night after the kids are in bed. You and hubby lay in bed and you cuddle. It doesn't have to be sexual, as in penetrative sexual. Maybe you cuddle skin to skin, like mother-child, right? Just do those types of things on a daily basis. Start there. And then
I love that, because that's such a simple way to start. And also, it's not too stressful of a way to start either. Because I would, if I try to like go back to when I was just diagnosed, I don't know that I would have the capacity to start tackling all the root cause contributors and jump into trauma and all of this. I think that would just feel too much. And I would have a avoidant kind of reaction where I just shut down and nope, don't want to deal with it. Whereas this kind of phased, gentle approach feels a lot more doable, a lot more safe, and definitely something that I think like many of us can commit to, right? 5, 10, 20 minutes a day for us, looking at the parts. Do I really need to stress over this? Is this really something? No. Can I let it go? Yes. Even if we can just do that for one thing.
Yeah,
that's a great start. So I think like seeing this as a kind of phased, gentle approach, and we're slowly going to get to those root cause contributors in time, feels very, safe, I think, for a lot of people.
And this is exactly what I'm seeing, not just in myself, but in my clients. So when I first started helping other people do this, I was like, okay, we're going to run 5 functional labs, and we're going to take an inventory of everything that's, adding stress to your allostatic load. And then we're going to address them one by one and peel back the onion, and you should feel better. Yeah. And that worked for some people. but others were hitting like a brick wall and they could not, no matter what, get relief. And so when I started digging into what's the daily habit, oh, you're a people pleaser and you do everything for everybody else and save yourself last. It doesn't matter what you eat. It doesn't matter like how clean your water is. If you don't address that and start feeding your soul and building time in a rest and digest state, you're not going to get anywhere. As I found more and more, especially after the pandemic, because the pandemic compounded all of the accumulated stress and trauma and grief that was already in the world. And so now I'm finding it's even more difficult to deal with things like Epstein-Barr or H. pylori, which is an infection that happens in the gut that I see in about 60% of women with LS that work with me. But the body won't let go of these things because the other thing that we need to know is when the nervous system is activated, it reroutes resources from every other system in order to make sure that you're prepared to fight, flight, fawn, all the 4 Fs. So if you're constantly in a state of an activated nervous system, your digestion turns off, your hormone production turns off, your healing capacity, like tissue healing, turns off. Everything is rerouted back to the nervous system. So if we don't have periods of rest, and I don't mean sleep is sleep, rest is filling your cup, experiencing joy, engaging in connection with others, showing up for yourself. Like you're kind of like fighting a losing battle.
And that's tough. I'm a huge people pleaser, so I can definitely speak to how challenging that can be to kind of break those habits, but you got to start small.
It literally is, like you said.
Yeah.
Can I control this thing that I'm stressing over? If no, then what else can I like funnel that effort into? Right. And for me, it's as simple as I put on an audiobook and I do a paint by number.
Right. Because I found that when I ask myself that, 90% of the time I can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And the way that I can work myself up over these things is absolutely bananas. Like I can work myself up into oblivion over things that no control, no real, nothing. But so starting small.
Some of that is because somewhere along the line you picked up the message that you needed because that's how you sourced safety. That's how you got your nervous system to feel safe and calm, is by, fixing or taking care of others or getting in front of the issue before it became a problem, right? That's how you source safety.
Oh yeah.
But for others, you may be genetically predisposed to have a hard time letting go of stress. So I use a couple of tests in my practice. Nutrition genome is one. These are tests you can access on your own. You don't have to go through a practitioner. Nutrition genome is one. The other one I use is 3x4, but now that I'm thinking about it, you do have to have a practitioner for that one. But what these are doing are looking at your nutrigenomics. So you might have a situation where you have genetics that don't allow you to process neurotransmitters as quickly and easily as people who don't have these genetic SNPs. This is true of me. The gene I'm talking about is COMT, C-O-M-T. It impacts your ability to metabolize estrogen correctly, but to also metabolize adrenaline and dopamine correctly. So if I get stressed, my system metabolizes adrenaline 40% slower than someone who doesn't have my genetic makeup. It's very easy for me to get stuck in fight or flight and get ruminating and work myself up. And it might even go to a place where I'm making connections and dots that kind of sound nutty because I am overamped with that bottleneck of neurotransmitters. So
that's fascinating. And that's called nutrition genome. Is that what you
Nutrition genome. I can give you guys a link for the show notes.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. I think there's going to be interesting.
There is a cost to it. It's a kit that they ship the kit to your home and then you swab your cheek or spit in a tube and send it back in. And it's a very intense report. It's like 100 pages that come back because they look at everything. But they tell you Can you convert beta carotene to vitamin A? Can you make enough vitamin D? Can you detox? Can you, all these
And
things.
do they give kind of lay summaries for this 100-page report or,
Yes.
okay.
Yes. It's just a big report.
Yes, which is fair. I immediately was just like, okay, but please tell me that I can understand the 100 pages.
You can. It's, yes, you can understand it, but you may be overwhelmed just by the amount of data that it provides you.
Yeah. I mean, to be like, in my case, I probably would get that data and then go work with a practitioner to kind of help me with that, even though I have those lay summaries, which help me. I initially get an understanding of what was found and so on and so forth. But I still, again, coming back to that, there's so much data. I like to just hand that over to the expert who can really help me understand all of that data.
Well, and the best way to do it is to overlay, because that's just your genetics, but what's actually happening in your labs and what's actually happening in your symptoms. And like Nutrition Genome doesn't know that you have LS. They don't know that you have whatever you have they don't know you as a person.
Yeah.
So you have to overlay all of these pieces. But if you have like serotonin bottlenecking, you may have sleep issues, and you may have always had sleep issues. And like, we just got to figure out like where your vulnerabilities are. But if you've been a person who's had a hard time with stress, or you've had multiple burnouts, you may just be more susceptible and vulnerable to stress kind of compounding on the system.
The human body is freaking wild. I love it.
The more I know, the more I'm like, I don't really know.
Yeah. It's wild to me, like, where we're at and how science has progressed, and it's just mind-blowingly fascinating.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, can you tell us a little bit about Soil to Soul Nutrition and what you do?
Sure. So my team and I, so there's two other gals that work under me. They're both former registered nurses. It depends on what you're coming to see us for. So more than half of our clients are dealing with cancer, in which case we are doing a lot of blood work. We run genetics on every single one of them, that Nutrition Genome test. And we are helping support them through whatever treatments they're working through. So if they're doing standard of care treatments like chemotherapy, radiation, surgery, those things, we help them through those, helping to mitigate side effects, helping to provide a diet that they can stick to through all of the nausea and the side effects and those kinds of things, and helping them understand what else in their terrain. So if we think of like the body as like a garden, the soil that the disease kind of took root in, helping them understand where it became vulnerable in the first place to allow a cancering process to develop, and kind of helping them pull those levers. And then on the autoimmune or complex chronic illness side, we're doing the same thing there, but we're using a lot of functional labs. And sometimes we're doing supplements. Sometimes I am a food first, nervous system first practitioner. And so I always start with, let's clean up the diet. And I don't mean take everything out and just eat meat, take everything out and just eat lettuce and water. I mean, what are you currently eating and how are you feeling? And how can we clean it up from a toxin perspective? And then maybe also balance it to make sure you're getting what is essential, that you cannot live without, protein and fat. And then how do we trickle in the carbohydrates so that it's not overwhelming the system? Because you can put too many Skittles in that gas tank and it will ruin the engine. And so that's essentially what we're doing. We're just kind of using testing to understand your disease process, your environment, your life, how your biography has become your biology. So what you've lived through and how that's impacted how you approach life. And then providing dietary recommendations, lifestyle recommendations, environmental engineering recommendations, and then helping people through this head, heart, nervous system component, which can be really nebulous. Like right now, nervous system regulation is really hot.
Right.
Well, you can regulate your nervous system in the moment. Like when you're stressed, you can use breathing exercises and you can calm down. But if you don't have capacity, i.e. that allostatic load is impacting your nervous system, then you're just always going to be overreactive to stress. And we have to figure out how to calm that down. And that's helping you comb through your life. Where can you find oxytocin? Where can you let go of some things that you're gripping onto too tightly? Are there things in your past that need to be addressed? Are there habits that you developed to survive from something else that you didn't even realize you're using today? So it's from top to bottom, soil to soul, all of it.
I love that.
You.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. Before we close out, is there anything you wanted to say on this topic that you didn't get an opportunity to say?
Well, it's difficult to distill it down into tangibles in a short chat like this without looking at someone's specific data. And I'm forever on the hunt to try and do that. And hopefully something stood out to someone and can help them start to kind of tinker with and troubleshoot their own system. But my heart is with you, girls. I've been there. I get it. I understand. So just big hugs to everybody.
Yeah, I feel that. Well, thank you so much, Heather. It's been a huge pleasure chatting with you for this past hour. Thank you to everybody watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.
Thank you.